Oh no, it's kicking off again at Alpine, and not even the really nice-looking Deadpool livery can save it from me noticing all of the chaos. All of this having ensued since Bruno Famine practically sacked everybody there, except maybe the tea lady, and maybe even her job's not safe. And now seemingly he's going to be the one that's going to be ditched next, and by this time next year we might have a completely unrecognisable Alpine team. Come on, Law, it can't be that bad, right? Well, I wouldn't call it bad, but it's certainly quite disruptive. And I'm not talking about the news about Faman's mission to destroy Esteban Ocon's F1 career failing, with him being confirmed over at Haas for 2025, with yet another multi-year contract where we have no idea how long it's going to last for. In any case, the Frenchman has been able to find sanctuary at another Formula 1 team. He lives to race another day, and for us to sample some of his red mist. And now he's going to be partnered up with a rookie. Yes, I am absolutely thrilled that my prediction for this year came true, especially since most of them were completely and utterly eviscerated when Lewis Hamilton decided that he decided to wear red next year. And I'm pretty sure that many people's predictions were completely torn to shreds. But all I'll say on the teammate front with Behrman and Ocon, that I hope that Behrman does not have to bear arms next year, yeah? Oh god, sorry, that was terrible. I really apologise. He feels more confident in opening up a little more in relation to his Alpine departure, because, you know, he's got a locked-in contract with another team, so he doesn't have to worry about his future integrity and destiny in F1. And he states that he left not because he had fought his teammate one time too many, but mainly to do with Alpine's failure to address long-standing technical weaknesses. And based on what he's been saying, this is not something that has been around for the last few months or something in the lead up to 2024, no. This supposedly has been going back as long as 3 years. Basically, his time at Alpine and the team peaked in 2021 when he got his first and only win thus far, and it's all been downhill from there. The ground effect era for Alpine, they've really been struggling, and they've not really been able to fix it. Nothing was getting done about those issues that the team were dealing with, and that certainly got dealt a hammer blow when Otmar Safnauer was sacked right before he had a chance to see all of the fixes that he had made to the technical infrastructure bear any fruit, as well as the staffing issues. And then there was the purge. So how could anything improve after that? So, quite frankly, I wouldn't blame Ocon leaving because he said that he was gonna leave at the end of this contract. I'm not sure whether I fully believe that, and just because, you know, he was sacked and he was saying, oh, I was going to leave anyway. But to be fair, I think there might be a kernel of truth to that he probably wouldn't have really been chomping at the bit to extend his contract with that team. He says that 5 years, it's been a good run, but maybe go somewhere else. Which makes me think more about that whole Monaco incident and the clashes with Gasly. Maybe since he wanted to leave the team, he felt like he could be a little bit more cavalier when it came to team orders. Whilst Gasly is willing to stick it out with Alpine a little bit longer, because basically he doesn't really have much of a choice at the moment, and either Jack Doohan, Carlos Sainz or Mick Schumacher will ride alongside him next year, there are major hurdles which the team still have to deal with. And the best thing that Alpine have been able to do to try and combat these issues, which again have been a problem for years at this point, it's almost been as bad as the whole tyre degradation issue that Haas have had to deal with for the past 5 years and have only just gotten a handle on, is basically Alpine copying what McLaren are doing almost verbatim. I mean, what are they going to do now? Hire Andreas Seidel after Sauber dropped him as their CEO? Just wait for that announcement. If it happens, you come here and you subscribe and like the video. Well, I mean, I don't think McLaren had to deal with this next bit, unless you count the situation with Oscar Piastri's contract as something similar, as this does have something to do with their legal department. More specifically, their former legal manager, Pierre Chauty, him having left his job as the Alpine legal manager not long after all of that went down with the Australian driver, about October 2022 or something like that. And after a couple of years and things going down at Alpine, he felt now the time was right to get on his LinkedIn profile and issue an absolute diatribe aimed at the Renault Group management. Not just Luca De Meo, the current CEO of the Renault Group, but the former one, Laurent Rossi, who was one of the figureheads that was responsible for the initial wave of sackings. And these are coupled with reports that are coming in that De Meo had informed staff at the team's engine base in Viry-Châtillon that their services were no longer required in between the Hungarian Grand Prix last weekend and this weekend's Belgian Grand Prix, and that he delivered the news not in person, with Chauty labelled as cowardice. Uh-oh. And that's not all. Apparently, Laurent Rossi also has his fair share of criticism hurled his way in this little report via LinkedIn, and I will share an example of this closely that Auto Evolution followed and LinkedIn post. Yeah, I think this has legs somewhat, you know. Ahem. Laurent Rossi's tenure as CEO of Alpine is another example of poor leadership and complete lack of humanity. He laid off numerous employees for purely political reasons, targeting those he deemed too close to the previous management, without even having the decency to speak to them in person, leaving the dirty work to HR, and obviously without any consideration with the relevant departments, he says in brackets. Rossi's disregard for internal compliance policies and his miserable ethical standards further exacerbated the situation. His decisions have led to a significant loss of talent and experience, driving the brand and the F1 team into its current predicament. You see, I'm inclined to believe this, since the legal department probably would have been very busy with disputes from employees that have been terminated and other firings, as well as working closely with HR. This isn't some random employee from a random department that has nothing to do with the comings and goings of the CEO. No, the legal department is a very big department of any Formula One team, because contracts these days especially are incredibly important and nuanced. And again, the whole Piastri debate, they would make sure that their brand new legal department was absolutely ironclad. The legal team at Alpine has been busy, and we've all sensed that the management of Renault has been very iffy when it comes to the F1 team as of late, and how they handle it. I don't think Renault's heart's in it anymore, but it really makes me think that Renault are genuinely looking at the options of giving up on making their own Formula One engine, for the first time in nearly half a century. For half a century, 50 years almost, there has been some sort of Renault power or Renault team involved in Formula One. Yeah, there was a little bit of a break in the early 80s, but they were one of the pioneers when it came to turbo power, and they've had their fair share of success. It's not like they've been in there just for the sake of it and not have anything to show for it. But it does seem like it is probably going to be ending, based on this report from Chauty, that their Renault Power Unit project after Briatore's findings have come in, and they'll most likely dub the project untenable because it's not producing results and it costs too much money. In fact, based on this report as well, it probably seems like the Mercedes deal is going to be going ahead after all. But supposedly, according to other rumours, it's actually exceeding expectations, that maybe the Renault Power Unit of 2026 might actually be good? But either way, it's not the first time Mercedes has powered the Enstone team, which did so back in 2015, and when you start to think about it, the only reason Renault came back into the sport the following year was to do the spat going on with Christian Horner, Red Bull, and the Renault Sport department, with their main customer constantly downing on the turbo hybrid power unit for being too slow, too unreliable, and not worthy of being in their car, because they hadn't invested enough money in the project. Certainly not as much or for as long as Mercedes had done. They want to make the most of Formula One's improving popularity, but yet they are unwilling to actually sink in tens of millions of dollars into the project, maybe even hundreds of millions of dollars, to make sure that they are at the top of the grid. For the longest time, they have been about 30, 40 brake horsepower behind anyone else, even Honda at the beginning of their woes and maladies. At least Honda, when the car would actually work, was slightly faster. Okay, maybe not in 2015 or 2016, but 2017, it looked slightly better, maybe. Which is also corroborated when the team changed their name from Renault to Alpine. Instead of viewing the project as some kind of halo entity for the Renault brand, the pinnacle of their technical innovations to showcase their might and capability, and what they can do with technology, especially with hybrids, it's there now to help promote a lesser-known brand when it came to the mainstream market. It's lumped in the responsibility of that moniker and how well they do to Alpine, a smaller brand which for the longest time only had one car. They've now got another car, but maybe they might get another car in, say, maybe 3, 4, 5 years' time? And it really makes me think that the original impetus, that oomph from 2015, go, oh yeah, Red Bull, you think we suck? We'll show you, we'll buy back our team. Well, that fire, that spirit under Cyril Abiteboul, now that he's been long gone, it's just not there anymore. The original motivation has long since departed, since the relationship with Red Bull and Honda proved to be incredibly successful, that Red Bull could go on to glory without Renault. So instead of trying to actually get their own back and continue that motivation, they're just using that team as a billboard instead, and they're fast forward to now where the team is weighing up its options. It's just all the more telling. Again, it really does want to make the most of Formula One, but it doesn't want to splash out the cash. That just doesn't work anymore. You can't be in Formula One and be half-hearted about it. And especially when you've got tens of millions of dollars of outside investment propping up your efforts, which hopefully will aid the F1 factory in the UK at least. But then we get the stalwart presence of journalist Joe Saward musing in with his green notebook that perhaps things might get even worse for Alpine in regards to these power units. That supposedly there could be a very real danger that the Alpine Formula One team may not have enough power units for this season. There might come a point at the end of the season where they either have to use an extremely worn out engine that could break down on them, or when they want to go and exchange a power unit, there isn't one. According to Joe, the French factory is incensed by the whirlwind speculation, uncertainty and doubt that they are about to be eliminated, which has been manifested in the mainstream media, and that it seemingly had little to no communication themselves from the departments and their superiors to the contrary. And maybe, to combat that and get some words, they could go on strike and not produce engines. Can you imagine a scenario where Alpine aren't able to race because they don't have a fresh engine? Or one of their original engines goes bang and they realise they can't replace it, so they have to go home or just sit on the sidelines? It would be incredibly embarrassing. And like I just mentioned, according to Planet F1, there are people at the plant who have had positive words to say about the new engine project, that it is exceeding expectations on the dyno. If it's canned, that it would lead to disastrous psychological states. Yeesh, not good. When this could happen, it's hard to say, but given the fact that supposedly and allegedly that the Chauty employees have been told that they've got their marching orders in between the previous race and this race, then during the summer break there could be some rumblings, and yeah, I'm not looking forward to finding out if that's the case, and Joe's words in his green notebook turn out to be true. And then Alpine, I mean, I don't know what they can do from there. The outside investors, would they really want to be in it? Will they pull their money or whatnot? It could get even worse, folks. Sword recognises that the management hasn't handled the situation well at all, especially regarding the presence of Briatore and the discussion of new engines, which could render the French arm of the team redundant and either fired altogether or put to use somewhere else in the Renault group. I get that things needed to change, and they needed to change quickly, especially before the new regulation cycle. But these changes are almost effectively like whiplash, like Mattia Binotto's appointment at Audi, replacing Andreas Seidel and probably James Key later on, and that completely changing the concept of Audi to be more focused on the power unit. And we're also talking about power units here at Renault, which really impresses on you folks that a power unit is going to be really crucial again in 2026. But it goes even further than that not even Bruno Famin is safe from being sacked after he had sacked many employees. Is this a little bit of Parma karma I see? I mean, to be fair, this isn't a surprise. He was meant to be a caretaker boss while Alpine sought a permanent solution. But since nobody was forthcoming, Renault basically said to him that, hey, if you think you can do the job, well, it's yours if you want it. So the only person up until now that could fire Bruno Famin was Bruno Famin himself, and in theory, Luca De Meo. But Luca De Meo wasn't going to be doing that anytime soon, because again, there weren't really that many options around that could easily replace Bruno. But then again, there could be, according to reports and rumours circulating around the founder and team principal of High Tech Grand Prix, Oliver Oakes. He's being showcased supposedly as a potential replacement for Famin, and if this is accurate, then this would be a surprising but a welcome one. High Tech is pretty legit amongst junior formulae, and whilst it would be a shame to see the team lose its founder, Alpine would gain a prominent figurehead, especially when it comes to finding future talent should Gasly move on. I mean, they could bring back Otmar Saf now and say all is forgiven and that all is well, but I doubt that Otmar would take that job. Supposedly, if Andretti do get into Formula 1, he said he will be their team principal should they be successful in getting a slot, which right now seems quite unlikely on their own back. But more remains to be found out about this rumour with Oakes, but I would be okay with this decision, as he has run High Tech for nearly a decade, and it's attracted outside investment which could sustain it, and it's doing the business in showcasing junior talent, especially in F2 right now with Paul Aaron. Although it is noteworthy for harbouring the likes of Nikita Mazepin in 2020. Now this is all very well and good, but there is something else that I found out in researching this video which really got me thinking and which really got me fired up, and could be a way for Michael Andretti to get his team into Formula 1 without having to get himself his own slot and 11th team, because quite clearly, Formula 1 management is going to do everything possible to make sure he does not get into Formula 1. Heck, even Greg Maffei, one of the owners of Liberty Media in Formula 1, has said he will do everything in his power to make sure that that team doesn't get in. Well, maybe this could be the way to get in without having to spend about $1 billion buying out the entire Alpine operation. Although, having said that, I think Renault would take the $1 billion, but hey, maybe they might be able to find some extra people in which to be able to do what they can, and maybe save the Vivi-Châtillon department. And I think that would go down very well, especially if they're threatening a strike. It's all come back round again. This could be the best theory yet, which could see Renault and Andretti work together without necessarily having to do a full-on buyout, which could mean a saving of several $100 million for this brand new outfit. You see, Renault is looking to cut costs, that's a given. And journalist Michael Schmidt proposes that instead of getting rid of the folks over at Vivi-Châtillon, but they instead allow the American entity in, with General Motors providing capital, assistance, and insight to help bolster the Renault power unit, which is chronically underpowered and the least reliable on the grid. Whether or not it will be called a Renault power unit or maybe badged as a General Motors one or a Cadillac one remains to be seen. It's a little bit too early to say. But in any case, if Renault can get some logistical and technical support from an outside operator, especially one of the biggest automakers in America, even though they are also riddled with debt, but they also want to be in Formula One and they also want to beat the likes of Ford, a collaborative effort is mooted by Schmidt. Since the odds of the American racing family getting into F1 have been blocked for several years using their own facilities, maybe an in with Renault could be a likely solution for the medium term, with General Motors and Cadillac propping up the operation and taking over day-to-day control of the engine department. And that maybe Cadillac and General Motors might come in as a power unit supplier anyway come 2028. We might see both Renault and Cadillac sharing their information, coming up with a super engine, because if these rumors are true that the Renault power unit actually is turning out to be pretty good, and then Cadillac can make the most of it with their own insight and their own data and their own money, this could actually challenge Mercedes if it all goes well and all of these rumors are actually correct. And that could be really spicy as well. And then we could see justice for the people at Enstone. And I think people would like to see that. And Schmidt also points out that key hires at Andretti had worked with Flavio Briatore in the past and the Renault F1 team, and that perhaps those the men might form a dialogue as the Italian overseer seeks opinion as to who will power the team. Again, it's obvious that Renault still wants to suckle off the teat of Formula One, whilst also not putting out as much outlay, which is kind of ironic in a way, because that was one of the reasons that Andretti was rejected by Formula One management, and yet one of its own teams is doing it. Yes, the Mercedes option is a very sensible one, and Toto will not say no to more money coming in for the team, but supposedly there has been blowback from the likes of Williams and Aston Martin stating that adding another customer as early as next year could dilute attention from their own technical partnerships. And it's a fair concern, because if there's another team taking up resources and time, it could lead to repairs taking a little bit longer, because parts will take a bit longer to produce because they're being stretched thin, the quality might reduce, and it's all very well and good having another team for R&D. But if Renault are coming in with Mercedes and they're getting used to running Mercedes power units again, they might not be able to produce valuable information for a couple of years or so once they get fully optimized. And yes, of course, Aston Martin is departing to work with Honda come 2026, but if they get this deal through Alpine Mercedes for next year, there'll be 5 teams powered by Mercedes. Half the grid will be under Toto's thumb, and you know that Alpine will be called to arms if Red Bull are going to be challenging them. I hope not that they don't pull that kind of stunt, but you never know with Toto if he wants to get one over Christian. And this Alpine deal could be logical. It isn't just for engines like it is with McLaren. The suspension and gearbox might be coming over to them as well. And Toto is keen to make it work, since reportedly the deal is at an advanced stage and it could be confirmed very soon. Whilst this could be seen as a turnkey deal, a no-brainer, a very easy one, since Mercedes is quite used to providing all of these parts to customer teams, it's not necessarily the one that gives the team the most autonomy and freedom whilst also reducing costs. So Schmidt's idea of being in collaboration with General Motors with the Villiers-Châtillon engine department could be a way of sustaining what they already have without having to actually put too much in, and maybe seeing something better anyway, especially if it turns out to be better than expected and Renault turned out to be really effective. I would want to see it happen. Give 2026 a go, and if it doesn't work out, can the project or whatever. I'm glad to see things are happening at the team though, and then we're not seeing the team settle into a period of malaise and drifting like we got with Williams in 2019 and 2020 before Doralton Capital bought them out. I am confident that Alpine will be competitive again, because this drop-off in performance seems to be really sudden, but based on the people there, it seems like it might be only temporary, transitory. As they get their ducks in a row, they get more hires in, they manage to have a more stable management, they might get their outside investors pumping in more cash again, they might actually come realize all of these upgrades and increasings in terms of staff and facilities. It could be really good. And yes, I do have to give credit to Flavio Briatore where it's due. Say what you will about the guy, but he has actually motivated the Alpine team to do something, instead of just infighting between the English and French departments, which has become oh so common as of late. And yes, Esteban Ocon might be leaving, but that could be for the best. We might be seeing a refreshed Alpine, especially if Ocon wanted to leave, but the contract said no. And if those rumours, especially if Ocon wanted to leave for Williams mid-season and then Fanman said no because, direct competition, then surely you would want to have better direct competition than Williams at the moment. Sorry, Alpine. All that is done for your brand is still make you out to be a joke, because Drive to Survive has showcased Alpine quite a lot, especially with all of the troubles regarding contracts, sacking people. Yeah, you thought that Alpine would become a cool brand. Well, it's not anymore, and not even World Endurance can save you. The Billboard plans failed, so they've really got to try again and really turn that team into a proper one, and I think they have the tools in which to do it. But another team, a proper team, which is seeing a little bit of struggling right now, is the likes of Red Bull. At the Hungarian Grand Prix, in my opinion, they had the worst race of the season, and it might only get worse, especially after Verstappen's ban on racing games at night is basically backfired, saying, yeah, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to continue doing what I want. You can find out more about my findings of this worst race ever in this video here that you can go and watch right now. And yeah, the video game angle with Max, it's a bit of a smokescreen in the Red Bull's in trouble. Yeah.